and the destruction, the burning, is what we call the Holocaust. And the conservative estimate for African people lost in slavery in eastern part on the East African coast, which extended to Uganda, to Congo, to Rwanda, to Malawi, all the way up to what we call South Africa now, was 200 million. And from West Coast, 400 million. So we are talking in total 600 million Africans shipped from Africa or ripped from their homes and taken to Europe, Americas, what we now call the Arab world, Persia, Babylonia, China, India. Portugal was involved in our enslavement. Spain was involved in our enslavement. Germanic tribes were also involved. Holland, the Dutch, was completely at the center of our enslavement. And everything that Holland has, it got from the enslavement of African people. Sweden was involved in our enslavement. Norway didn't exist as a state, but at the time it was part of Holland. It was involved. Poland was involved. Italy didn't exist as a state, but Florence, and other states were involved in our enslavement. Britain was the major slave trade. Britain and America eventually controlled the slave trade, because by 1492, despite the arrogance of the Europeans today, Europe was nothing but a fourth-rate backward country where people stole to exist or in self-preservation. We are talking about the sale of African people in large numbers to be enslaved as producers of the wealth that later builds up Europe. By a pope called Pope Urban, who was in Cluny in France. He started a 400-year war with Muslims, and it led to the death of more than 18 million people. Europeans and Arabs have been fighting each other for centuries, thousands of years. They had developed skills and huge implements of war, and siege machines, and arrows, and tactics of survival in war and in combat. Now, it was these skills of Europeans in combat, these skills of Arabs in combat, that they brought to Africa, to pacifist communities. African people don't want war. African people are welcome to strangers. It took African people a long time to see an expedition of Arabs and think they had come to capture them. They would think, what guests? Look for food, kill cows, let call everybody to greet them. In Congo, what would happen is, as soon as Portuguese traders came, the whole village would gather to see. And all of them would bring food. And most of these Portuguese would first eat, and they would talk to the king, and they would do this. Then eventually they take everybody as captive. Involved in slavery, plantation agriculture was in place in the Caribbean. Cotton, tobacco. Before African slavery, slave ships were already in place. So slave merchants were already in place selling Europeans to the Caribbean. You find laws set up to stop the sale of Europeans to the Caribbean. Judges would conspire with traders. Even if it was a small misdemeanor, the person would be convicted and sold to the Caribbean. So Europe is empty. So before African people get involved in slavery, there are already slaves, enslaved people in the Caribbean, in the names of Native Americans who are dying, and again, Europeans. When the Native Americans were dying because of European diseases, it was a man called Bartholomew de las Casas, was a Spanish bishop who had close ties with the Queen of Spain. And he goes to the Queen and he says, the Native Americans are dying and Europe is being emptied of people because it is against Christian law to sell people into slavery. They put this proposition to the Pope, who at the time was our famous Pope Alexander Borgia. Bartholomew de las Casas had suggested that in order to save the souls of Native Americans, he says, let us, those Native Americans that agree to convert to Christianity, we shall not enslave, but those that don't will be enslaved. However, the plantation agriculture required labor. We shall bring African people because the Pope had already decreed that the African people had no souls to save. The Portuguese, who started coming to West African coast in 1443, captured 7 Africans and take them to Portugal. There was huge celebrations and these Africans were paraded in Portugal. Why? Because for the first time Europeans were able to invade Africa and draw European blood. And 3 of these Africans were given as a trophy or as a gift to the Pope. Then they came again, so they started expanding on the West African coast, making some punitive raids. Eventually, when they reached the coast of Guinea, present-day Ghana, they found the Akan trading in gold, and they found African ships going to the Caribbean. So they set up a fort there, which would later become a slave fort. And that slave fort is called Elmina Castle, and then Cape Coast Castle. Underneath Elmina Castle, they put what they call dungeons, slave dungeons. So the capture of African people would normally take place in the evening, at night, when they're having a communal meal. The Arabs would come with African traders, middlemen, and these middlemen would be given rum, alcohol. Sometimes they come during the day, hide somewhere, and then they would capture almost everybody. All people were killed instantly. The villages would be burned. Some of the animals would be taken, but those that remained would also be killed. Those that resisted capture would be shot. If you run away, if you try to resist, you would be shot. Children, the first act in the slave reign was the raping of women on spot in front of their husbands or their brothers or their elders. That was the first act of breaking what was called seasoning. The way the community was seasoned is to get all the women and gang rape them. And they would invite the father or the brother or to hold the legs of the women while they carry out this rape, hold the legs and arms, and to muffle them so that they don't cry. Children would be sodomized and they would be raped, but they'd be left behind to die. And no rape would be done by less than 15 people. And most of the time what would happen was the senior commander of the Arabs raid would raid first and then others in the grave. And also African traders would be invited to do the same. So this was the first act of slave breaking, because slave breaking aimed at achieving 3 things. Number 1 is docility, docile, to break your resistance. Number 2 is compliance, so that when they are portioning blame, if you rape your sister, if your sister is raped and you are holding her legs, then you would have participated in the act. Eventually, when she's angry, she's not only angry with the slave master, she would be more angry with you. Then the captured, those who would be making the journey, would be chained one to each other, mainly through the neck. There would be a long metal iron that would go around your neck like a tie. But it it was connected to the person behind you. So then you would be carrying heavy luggage in this caravan. They would not leave anybody standing in this village. There would be no food. Imagine the trauma now of people who have been stripped from the community where they have lived, where they have danced. The philosopher would go, the meteorologist would go, the priest would go, the agriculturist would go, the wisest person in the village would go, the library, the priest would go, the king, the prince would go, and nothing would be left behind. Sometimes children would escape. Maybe somebody looking after goats, maybe somebody looking after cows, but when they came back, there would be no village to look or to see or to support them. And stories are told of children who would just follow the slave caravan looking for their parents. Now, most of the African people didn't know what was coming to them. They didn't know. They did not know that death and destruction was coming to them. So they would transport these people from one area to a collecting center. There would be no toilet. You couldn't say, I want to go to the toilet. Some of the women would be pregnant. Most of the mothers chose to pick herbs on the way that would induce them to abort the child. If you aborted and lost blood, you would be left there to die. They did not kill somebody who had aborted, or they did not kill somebody who was weak. No. They wanted to leave that person behind so that ravens and eagles and all the other birds would come and peck at them. And that would spread fear into the hands of those who would be left behind. The first thing you are meant to give up is you are supposed to give up your God. Number two, you are give up your name, a name, because the name identifies you with your land, language, and culture. And number three, you are supposed to give up your language, any element of your culture, whether it was drumming, singing, storytelling, whatever, you had to forget them. And only when you had fulfilled these four conditions would you be taken from a slave island, from a slave breaker's island, you would begin your servitude in the hands of your slave master. You had to be instructed in basic words of English. Your language is not to be spoken at all and forever, because language transmits your spirit. They were held here for 2 years, and before they went in chains, the slave master would brand you like a cow. So if your slave master was John, they would have a brand that says John, and they would brand you on your back. Or in case you get mixed up, they know that you are John. Because the slave ship would take about 300 or 400 people. So there'd be a chain. So you would lie with your legs towards the wall of the ship and the head towards the alley. So there'd be one person here, one person there, one person there, and all you could see is the head, the body in that side. And at the end of each line, there'd be a big lock. So one lock would lock up about maybe 30 people in a row. You would only be allowed out once every 3 or 4 days, to go and exercise. And you'd be forced into drumming. They would drum and you are forced to dance. That was the exercise they carried out. Imagine before this horrifying journey, or inside this horrifying journey, because you'd be captured from African interior. You have been traveling, carrying ivory and heavy luggage. If you fell down, you'd be left there, or you'd be killed. And you are in that trauma, in that pain, because almost everybody you know, your grandfather who couldn't walk has been killed, the child who is too young has been hacked to death, your brother is burnt, your village devastated, and then you see your scientist, your philosopher, your musician, they are all with you, and you have a chain around your neck that joins you to the person next, and you have these Arabs, and you have got these Europeans, and they have a whip, and a white man carrying a gun is at the back, and you are trekking sometimes 300, 400 kilometers, carrying food. No, you don't stop if you cross the river to get water, and then you'll be taken to the West African coast or the East African coast to be put in this dungeon and wait for the slave ship to come so that it takes you to your enslavement in the Caribbean. The majority of these African people would die either on the way to the coast or they would die in the Atlantic. If a slave ship took 300 people, maybe 60% would die on the way. These bodies would be picked from the slave ship and thrown into the Atlantic. Fish would follow this slave ship looking for bodies that had been dropped. As a matter of fact, the shark didn't begin eating people until during the time of their enslavement in the Americas, because they developed an appetite for the bodies of African people that were thrown in the Atlantic. Slavery was brutal because African people resisted enslavement. African people were people that were used to freedom, excessive freedom, used to enormous freedom, and it was that very difficult for an African to be conditioned to accept that you have been captured and you have been taken away. Millions of cities and towns and villages that were burnt and razed to the ground because the slave traders did not want civilization to survive or people to reorganize. So they banned cities, they banned villages, they banned particularly granaries after rooting the food that you could carry. So they banned cities, towns, and villages. And at the time of 1492, Africa was so full of cities. A city like that of Benin, Dutch trader, Benin, most of the streets had storage buildings lined on each side. As a matter of fact, Holland got most of its concept of cities and France from a town called Benin, the city of Benin called the Oba. That are springing up because of the demand for slavery, and most Europeans putting pressure on some African middlemen with European middlemen and Arabs to go and capture, Africans. So nations would be forced sometimes to fight each other, because if you didn't fight your neighbor, you yourself would be enslaved. That even the king that participated in enslaving his people was sold in the end. Millions also of African factories that existed, including iron smelting and copper smelting and gold smelting. African people were smelting iron 40,000 years ago at Alundupai Gorge. In Ankole, you have places like Wahene, and that town is so cold because the stones in Ankole were called Obtai. So iron smelting in Buganda too. They were making iron in Mubende. If you go to Nakaima Hill, for Africa, but devastation. To give you an example, the Romans took the British as slaves. They enslaved the British. They fortified the city, so they built a wall to protect themselves from invasion. And these wars were called castras. So most of the towns and activities like American bases now took place in these castras. When you hear Britain, you hear things like Lancaster, Manchester, Doncaster. Those were Roman forts. Romans built roads in Britain. They built aqueducts, to carry water. When the Roman rule ended in Britain, these structures they had built in Britain remained in Britain. But there was no such benefit for Africa. Nobody other than castles on the West African coast and on the East African coast to hold slaves, other than castles that were built to hold slaves, like Elmina Castle. But when we mention African slavery, we are talking about the rise of European capitalism and the rise of European economies. Cities that sprang up like Bordeaux that would have 300 slave ships sailing from Bordeaux every day. Nantes, Bordeaux, every time slave ships came to Bordeaux and left Bordeaux to board Africans in West African coast, the trade at the time was estimated at $39 million per route. $39 million. Nantes in France. Cities like Manchester, Liverpool, the biggest slave trading port in Britain, Liverpool, Bristol. These are cities that sprang up and became major cities because of African slave trade. We are also talking about financial institutions that sprang up and became major and powerful. For example, in 1756, the two Barclay brothers, David Barclay and Alexander Barclay, out of the revenue they had from slave ships, set up a bank, which bank is called Barclays Bank to this day. The Catholic Church sold what was called the Asiento, was a dispute resolution, set itself as the middleman in the slave trade in case there is a dispute. Somebody has stolen my slave ship, pirates have kidnapped this gold, my gold was stolen, they'd go to the Pope, but every time they went to the Pope, they would pay something called the Asiento. Lloyd's of London, Lloyd's, which is one of the biggest insurance houses, Lloyd's of London was an insurance company that was set up specifically to insure slave ships on the transit against kidnap, against pirates, and it is now one of the biggest financial institutions and investment house, in London. Wall Street became Wall Street because the wall was built to separate the slaves from the traders. Now, the Watt steam engine that started the Industrial Revolution in Britain was started directly out of the profits from the sale of African slaves by the merchants of the Caribbean. Scotland, almost every building, every street, every city in Scotland was built out of the sugar plantations that were set up in the Caribbean, and the profit came to Scotland, to build Scotland and most of England. Most of the rich home families in Scotland, made their wealth from the Caribbean, from the sale of Africans. Nicholas and Brown, who set up a university called Brown University of Rhodes, were merchants of slave ships. The university set up directly out of money from enslavement. The Brown University that offers those Rhodes scholarships. kicked out of Spain and Portugal and parts of France, when African kings and queens are now in chains in slave boats. In 1776 at a university in Germany called Göttingen, Johann Winkelmann, Blumenbach, Milner, they sat together at this university that was set up by Edward IV of England at the time when England still ruled Germany, and wanted to say, with Africa in trouble, we want to put in place an education system that forgets Africa. At the time they thought that civilization started in Africa, high technical civilization in ancient Egypt and ancient Ethiopia, and it was the Egyptians that educated the Greeks and educated the Romans. So they said, let us bury Africa at the bottom of the world heap, there never to rise again. Let us scale down the mountains to Asia and teach that humanity started in the Caucasus Mountains, and ditch the mountains of the north. That humanity started from the Caucasus Mountains, and teach that Noah's Ark settled on Mount Ararat. When we read from UNESCO as the result of the work of Professor Like and other subsequent work, it leads us to conclude that more than 150,000 years ago, beings morphologically identical with the man of today were living in the area of the Great Lakes, at the source of the Nile, at the foothills of the mountains of the moon, and nowhere else. This was facts universally established in Europe before 1776. And they would call the European white people Caucasian. There is no such a thing as Caucasian race. That word starts from 1776. Now, they take scholarship, they study European scholarship, because this was the first university white people put together. Before that, most of the universities were set up by African people and create what they call classical studies, studying Greece and Rome. They take Ethiopia and Egypt out of Africa and create what they call Middle East. When you look at maps of Africa, Egypt, when they show you maps of Africa, when you cross on North Africa, Egypt and Ethiopia are not there. Then they devoted the study from then on of Egypt and Ethiopia would be the study of what they call archaeology. Forget about what they wrote, forget about philosophy, forget about astronomy, forget about chemistry. Look at the temples, look at the monuments, write about the pyramids, but from an archaeological point of view. Then the rest of Africa would be relegated to the study of what they call anthropology, including Ethiopia, including ancient Mali, including Timbuktu, which had a university city called Djenne, including the Akan, who are making clothes like this. And anthropology is looking for the minute tribe this time, because they have no king, they have no queen, they are living on the edge. To hold a festival, when they eat a buffalo, when they hunt a buffalo and kill it, they don't go to grow food for a month. They have no organized system of justice, or they have no written language. That is anthropology. From the church to derob African people from using the expression ancestors. They want you to forget your ancestors. They want you to completely dissever yourself from your heritage, from your lineage. However, the same people telling you to abandon your ancestors are also telling you to do what? To worship their ancestors. They want you to call on Abraham, because if you try to remember their ancestors, it will take you completely to the time when your ancestor was being auctioned like chicken, when your ancestor was in chains, when your ancestor was being used to develop Spain and Portugal and England and Holland and Denmark. None of these countries were anything before they came into contact with us. That is why European history in high school starts from the French Revolution, 1896. They start from the end. Why? Because a few steps backwards would take you in place at a time when Europe is being ruled by Africans. When the most civilizing influence in Europe is the golden age of the Moors. African people will only resurrect once they know their powerful legacy, once they know their contribution toward the forward flow of human history, once they know that almost every city in Europe is built on the labor and pain of black hands, on the sweat of black toil. There would be no Europe if it was not for African people. No Europe in education, no Europe in religion, no Europe in philosophy, no Europe in wealth, if it was not. And certainly there would be no America if it was not for black people. Every kingdom must be able to make its own clothes and have a seal of the king on that clothes. Only when you know yourself and your contribution shall all these issues that we have at this petty level be resolved. What you have done before, you can do again. It is ingrained in your DNA. Technology is in our DNA. Technology, science, alchemy, chemistry, it is all passed through us. Because they said you will never rise again. And every time I teach in Europe, I begin by that phrase. Yes, we shall rise.